The alarm shrieked through the research station with a sound that made every species freeze in their tracks. Commander Vexthor, a towering Krath warrior whose ancestors had hunted megafauna across 3 star systems, felt his blood run cold. His cubs were missing. The Krath were apex predators feared throughout the galaxy. Their reputation preceded them: 8 feet of scaled muscle, claws that could tear through starship hull plating, and a protective instinct so fierce that entire civilizations had learned to give them wide berth when their young were involved. Vexthor had brought his cubs to the station as a gesture of goodwill, proof that even predators could participate in peaceful cooperation. Now that decision haunted him. "Seal all exits," he growled, his translator struggling to convey the depth of his panic. "No one leaves until I find them." Emma Rodriguez, the station's human xenobiologist, looked up from her research terminal as the lockdown protocols engaged. She'd been working late again, cataloging samples from the latest expedition. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. That was when she heard it, a soft chirping sound coming from the living quarters section. "That's odd," she muttered, pushing away from her desk. The living quarters should have been empty. Most of the crew were either on duty or in the recreation area. She followed the sound down the corridor, her sneakers making soft squeaking noises against the metal floor. The chirping grew louder as she approached her own quarters. Emma's hand hovered over the door panel, hesitation flickering across her face. She'd locked it, hadn't she? The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. There on her bed, the same bed she'd hastily made that morning before her shift, were 2 small forms. Vexthor's cubs. They couldn't have been more than a few months old by Krath standards, each about the size of a large earth dog. Their scales glinted blue-silver under the soft lighting, and their tiny claws kneaded at her blanket as they chirped contentedly. "Oh no," Emma whispered. "How did you 2 get in here?" The cub's head swiveled toward her voice, their enormous eyes, each one larger than Emma's fist, regarding her with curiosity rather than fear. The smaller one chirped again, a sound that somehow managed to be both alien and utterly endearing. Emma's mind raced through her xenobiology training. Krath cubs imprinted on warmth and safety. They were drawn to enclosed spaces that smelled familiar or comforting. But why her quarters? She'd barely interacted with Vexthor beyond professional courtesies. The station's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, report any sighting of Commander Vexthor's offspring immediately. This is a priority 1 situation. I repeat." Emma reached for her communicator, but the smaller cub made a distressed sound. Both cubs suddenly scrambled across her bed, their claws catching on the fabric. Before she could react, they'd launched themselves at her. The impact knocked her backward onto the bed. Emma found herself flat on her back with 2 baby apex predators climbing onto her chest. They circled once, twice, then settled down, their warm bodies rising and falling with each breath. Within seconds, both cubs were asleep, purring with a sound like distant thunder. Emma lay perfectly still, afraid to move. This was how people died in nature documentaries, misunderstanding a predator's intentions, making the wrong move at the wrong time. But the cubs showed no aggression. They'd simply chosen her, Emma, to Commander Vexthor. She said softly into her communicator, trying not to disturb the sleeping cubs. "I found your children. They're in my quarters. And, sir, they're on top of me." The response was immediate. The sound of running footsteps shouted commands, and then her door burst open. Vexthor filled the doorway, his combat armor making him look even more imposing than usual. Behind him stood Noah Chen, the station's head of security, his hand on his sidearm. The commander's eyes found his cubs immediately. Emma watched as his expression shifted from panic to confusion, to something she couldn't quite identify. He took a step forward, then stopped. "Don't move, Emma," Noah said quietly, his tactical training evident in his measured tone. "Sir, we should—" "No," Vexthor interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. He was staring at Emma with an intensity that made her want to sink into the mattress. "This is unprecedented. Commander?" Noah's hand remained on his weapon. Vexthor slowly removed his helmet, revealing features that Emma had only seen through armored viewports. His eyes, so similar to his cubs, were fixed on her with something approaching wonder. "In 3,000 years of recorded Krath history," he said, his natural voice deep and resonant without the translator's metallic overlay, "cubs have never chosen an alien species for comfort. They trust only their parents, their pack, He took another careful step forward. What did you do? Emma's laugh came out shaky. Honestly, I just existed. They broke into my room. Noah holstered his weapon, a smile tugging at his lips despite the tension. Maybe they liked her research notes. Emma's been studying interspecies pheromone communication. It's not that, Vexthor said, kneeling beside the bed. His massive hand hovered over his cubs but didn't touch them, as if afraid to break whatever spell had been cast. They feel safe. With a human. This should be impossible. The smaller cub stirred, opening one eye to regard its father. Then, seemingly satisfied, it burrowed deeper against Emma's chest and went back to sleep. Humans, Vexthor said finally, shaking his head in disbelief. You are the strangest species in the galaxy. You should be prey, soft, weak, with no natural defenses. Yet you walk among predators as if you belong. And somehow, impossibly, we believe you. Emma finally found her voice. So, how long do I need to stay like this? Noah checked his data pad. Krath cubs typically sleep for 3 to 4 hour cycles. 4 hours? Emma's eyes widened. Vexthor's expression, already unreadable to human eyes, softened further. I will stay with you if you permit it. This is an honor I did not expect to receive from your kind. As Noah left to inform the crew that the crisis had passed, Vexthor settled into a chair beside Emma's bed. The mighty warrior looked almost peaceful, watching his cubs sleep on the human's chest. You know, Emma said quietly, this is either going to be the best or worst footnote in my research career. For what it is worth, Vexthor replied. You have taught the Krath something new today. Perhaps we predators have much to learn from humanity's strange capacity for trust. Outside, the station returned to normal operations. But in that small room, something unprecedented had occurred. A moment of understanding between species, facilitated by two cubs who simply knew that some warmth transcends biology, and some safety cannot be quantified by size or strength. It could only be measured in trust.